Like, I'm shocked I didn't join a cult or fall into MLM. Like, I am the prime candidate to be like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I'll help out your business and I'll recruit other women. Yes.
Welcome to Story and Craft. Now, here's your host, Mark Preston.
All right, here we go. Back again, another episode of Story and Craft. Thank you so much for popping back over. Hey, if this is your first episode, thank you very much. My name is Mark. Good to meet you. Good to spend a little bit of time with you. Gonna have some fun today sitting down with actor, writer, showrunner Katy O'Brien. New show on Tubi. She is producing, writing. It is called The Z Suite. Kind of about the confluence of different generations. And if you're kind of like me, Gen X kid, sit down with your Gen Z kid. You'll both enjoy it. I promise you, it's a fun show. Coming out February 6th on Tubi. She was just a blast. Really enjoyed talking with her. Hey, always ask, please do me a favor. Pop over to storyandcraftpod.com/rate. Once again, storyandcraftpod.com/rate. Drop a note, a little review if you will, drop some stars, but make sure to follow Story and Craft. That way you get notified every time there's a new episode. So just follow the show and you're all set to go. But of course, leaving the review, the stars, all that goodness helps folks to find and to experience the mischief I've got going on right here. All right, so let's jump right into it. Great conversation, really enjoyed it. Today is Katy O'Brien Day. Right here on Story and Craft. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you? Are you in Los Angeles?
No. I am actually in Texas. I live on an island called South Padre, which is the very, very, very southern tip of Texas.
I know South Padre.
People usually say, I know South Padre, followed by there was this one spring break.
Yes, that's exactly how I know South Padre.
Okay.
Yes. But what a beautiful place to live.
When the youngest was off to college, it's like, where do I want to be? Love LA, love Dallas. I was like, I'm going for the Jimmy Buffett lifestyle now. You can work from anywhere now. COVID kind of taught us that to a degree.
Yeah.
Now, where are you from originally?
I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska.
Okay.
So I have no desire. I mean, I love Omaha, but I don't have a desire to go back and live there. But yeah, that's where I'm from. But right now I'm in Palm Springs just because of the fires.
Usually whenever you see fires, it's kind of in areas I've never been to, but how far it's gotten in is it's just heartbreaking to see.
It's devastating. It's really, really devastating. So I am down here for the time being, but it's just heartbreaking. I love LA and it's just very sad what's happening. So it's hard to watch it.
So where's your home in LA?
My home in LA is the Valley. I live in the Valley, which I love. But right now we're under this everybody's sort of waiting to see what's going to happen with this Palisades fire and the Santa Ana wind. So, but yeah, I'm in the Valley there and I love it. It's great.
I can't get over the wind there. So the winds were like 100 miles an hour or something. I was like that.
It was crazy. I've never experienced anything like that. It was so strong and so loud. And yeah, it's not good. I don't know. It's all kind of awful.
Well, LA has so many different personalities. You got the Santa Ana winds, and then in June, you got this June gloom.
June gloom, yeah.
Which I never really understood. I was like, well, what's the story? After about 4 o'clock, everything kind of clears off.
Yep.
It's a city with its own meteorological personality.
Yes, for sure.
But I gather it's the industry and everything. But how did you end up? Omaha to LA it's a jump. I'm assuming you came out to LA for work, or you just said, hey, LA's a cool place to live, or how'd that come together for you?
It's a bit of a jump. I came out to LA by way really of Chicago. So grew up in Omaha, and always really wanted to be in the industry, but nobody in Omaha works in entertainment. I mean, that's like a crazy idea. I think we had a family friend who knew somebody who was like a producer on 2.5 Men or something. Like that was like the closest connection we had. But I went to school in Chicago and got really into improv and was doing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I was doing improv there. And so then I was performing, and I was with a comedy group there, the Katydids. We were all named Katie. There's 6 of us. And we created a web series.
Really?
Yes, yes. There's 6 women that were in the improv community named Katie, or some variation. It was, let's see, Katie, Katie, Kate, and Caitlin. And we were performing, and then we created a web series, and I decided to move out to LA to really kind of give a crack at being an actor and working in the industry. And so, yeah, I kind of came out by way of Chicago.
Where'd you go to school there?
I went to school at the University of Illinois at Chicago, but I was a transfer student. So my first year, I went to a really small school in Minnesota called St. Thomas. And then I just really wanted to do improv. And my parents were like, you, yeah, like they were so supportive. But they were like, you can't, like, I was like, I'm just going to move to Chicago and do improv. And they were like, cool, cool, cool. You do have to go to school.
Was it like the whole Second City thing? Was that what was
Yes.
kind of bringing you out there?
Second City, I saw Second City in high school, and I was like, this is what I want to do. Okay. Keep in mind, Mark, I never did Second City. So, but that, I just remember seeing it and falling in love with it. And I was like, I really want to do this. And then my first year of college in Minnesota, I just was really fixated on it, and I couldn't get it off my brain. And so I said to my parents, I really want to go and do this. And they were very supportive, and they were like, you can go and do it, but you do have to go to school. And so I transferred to the University of Illinois at Chicago, but I really was just performing improv all the time. So IO was the theater I performed at predominantly there. And that really was like my college. But I got a degree at the University of Illinois at Chicago.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, growing up watching Saturday Night Live, well, before I probably should have, you know, that was kind of like you know, besides the like Canadian folks, you know, Chicago was kind of where it was happening. You
Oh
know,
my gosh, everybody. Yeah, like growing up, Christopher Guest was my big like influence growing up. I mean, I remember watching Best in Show and Waiting for Guffman, and I was like, what is this? And then Saturday Night Live too. And then everybody that I really admired or was obsessed with comedically had kind of gone through Chicago and had gone through Second City. And so I just thought, well, that's the path. I have to go and do that. So yeah, I mean, Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert. I mean, so many incredible people.
with Stephen Colbert and Steve Carell, you know, they had this one bit they did. God, what was that? That they played like 2 waiters that hated talking about food and made him nauseous or something. You know, what it reminded me of is like, wait a minute, these are grown adults doing this thing I remember from high school. I'm like, what a gig that's got to be, you know? So was comedy, was that the goal for you? Or were you like, okay, I want to do something performance, and you just kind of figure your on-ramp is going to be through improv?
I always really loved comedy, and I always really gravitated towards Christopher Guest and sort of that like improv model with like Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy, and really watching all those films. But I never thought that was a job. Like I just didn't think that was a career path. And so for a really long time, I was like, oh, I'm going to go to law school, which I would have made the worst lawyer ever. Like I truly would have been absolutely horrible. But I was always really, really drawn to comedy. And then I really started out as a performer and really loved performing comedy. And so when I first came out to LA, I really wanted to be an actor and was going down that route. But, you know, you go on enough auditions where you don't get called back or book anything, and you sort of start to realize, maybe this isn't what I should be doing. So that was initially what I first was really drawn towards. And then with my comedy group, the Katydids, we had done this web series in Chicago called Teachers, and that sold as a TV show. And so that sort of became this master's class in television where we were acting in it, writing, executive producing, and wearing all the hats. And that was really when I sort of like realized, oh, I like acting, but I actually really love all this other stuff. So I sort of pivoted then.
So the idea of everything happening behind the camera was in kind of enamored. You were enamored with that as well as the performance part.
Yeah.
That's. I mean, that's it. At the very least, you were getting an education on how the machine works, so you knew how to
Oh my
work within it and
gosh.
wherever you decided to land.
It was the best education possible. It really was like a master's class in TV where, we had this really like lightning in a bottle situation where we were just handed our own television show and we got to create it and write it and star in it. And so you have to wear all the hats. And then I really became obsessed with, watching something go from an idea all the way to having to execute it on camera. And I just loved that whole process. So that's
Yeah, was that how did the TV thing, this was a skit you were doing, or something you were doing with the Katydids.
yeah.
Was it where you were like, "Hey, let's put this thing on TV," or was the how did that end up coming together?
No, that never seemed like a possibility. So we shot this web series in Chicago called Teachers, and this really incredible production company in Chicago, Cap Gun Collective. We did a Kickstarter, but they agreed to fund the rest of it, and we filmed.
Mhm.
I don't know how many short little episodes, but we had this great director, Matt Miller, and we just wrote these little sketches. And
Mhm.
they were 2 to 3 minutes long, and we released them on the internet. And then I moved out to LA and was like, okay, bye. Like, I'm going to go and try and be an actor. And moved out to LA and was selling fiber bars at Whole Foods, which is like a whole other thing. And then it started to gain traction. The series started to gain traction online. And then it was just super fortuitous. TV Land was rebranding at the time to become a comedy network. They had the Jim Gaffigan show and Younger with Darren Star, and they saw the web series and they made an offer. And
So they're probably looking at like, "Hey, where are the kids at right now?" And they're going,
yes,
"Okay, YouTube or wherever." And now I'm kind of like getting a little bit of the idea of the genesis of the Z Suite little teeny tiny bit.
yeah, there you
But
go.
fiber bars. Tell me more about this. So were you were you working for Whole Foods, or were you distributing like on behalf of a fiber
Um,
bar company to them?
Let me tell you what I was doing, Mark. I had a friend who I had like no job prospects in LA, and I had a friend who I don't even know who she worked for, but she basically was like, "Do you want to make $20 an hour?" And I was like, "Yes." He was
Yeah.
like, "Why don't you help my company sell fiber bars at Whole Foods?" So I basically would drive around to different Los Angeles Whole Foods and set up a little stand. And I had an apron and a little hat, and I would give out samples of fiber bars. And
Oh,
yeah,
okay,
talk to
okay.
people.
You're one of the sample
I
people. I
was a
like that.
sample
Okay.
girl. Yeah. And I would talk to people about how they could be more regular. And it was really it was a dark time. It was a dark.
We've all had those dark times.
Yeah,
It's like you sit there, where you sit there and go, I don't know if this is one of those character building moments or what this is, but it falls into the category of you got to do what you got to do to get done what you got to get done
truly.
and
I was
pay
just
the
like,
bills.
yeah, I have to pay my bills. And then oddly, it like somehow got darker where they would deliver these fiber bars to my apartment, and then I would have to like schlep them in my sob, like around these different Whole Foods, but I was storing them in my apartment. And then, anyways, long story short, we were like having a rodent problem. And I was like, where are these coming from? And like, what is the issue? And like, they were like, is there anything these like rodents could be feeding on? And I was like, no. And then I was like, oh my God, it's the fiber bars. So it was
But they were very regular
very
rodents.
regular rodents. But yeah, it was a very
But
dark.
hey, it could have been worse. You could have been doing multi-level marketing.
Thank you so
It's
much. At the end of the day, at
but
least it's not that. Yeah.
Because it seems like to me, whenever my experience around actor folk that are they're trying to do whatever it takes to make it happen, and I think that in LA there are plenty of opportunities where people not get preyed upon, but You know, there seems to be a zen to just having a job where you go in and get an hourly wage. You know, a lot of the, you know, because there's always like somebody working a deal. You know, it's
Yes.
like, hey, we're doing this thing. You know,
Yeah. I was always the
but
prime candidate for those too. Like if you really wanted to, like, I'm shocked I didn't join a cult or fall into MLM. Like I am the prime candidate to be like, yeah, absolutely. Like I'll help out your business and I'll recruit other women. Yes.
yeah, at least nobody was asking you to, buy, matching sweats and tennis shoes. I mean, you're good, if you don't find it, Um,
Exactly.
when you came from going back to Omaha, like what were your folks up to? What kind of gigs were they doing back home?
They both were lawyers. So that's where the law idea came from, where I was like,
Mm.
well, this makes sense. They were both lawyers, but they also were very into comedy and very funny people. I'm also the oldest of five. So we were like a very funny family. But yeah, they were professional people. So, I think when I became really obsessed with going to do this, they were so supportive. I cannot stress that enough. But it is kind of a crazy thing to have your daughter be like, I'm going to go give a crack at improv comedy, to sort of be like, go for it, but
Well, the time to do it is when you're young. It becomes a little bit more precarious when you're over 30 and you're like, I want to try doing this thing now. I mean, hey, if you're 50, you can still do it, but I mean,
true.
when you're young, you got a little bit more. You can weather the speed bumps a little bit better, I
Yes.
think.
Yes.
Now, what kind of law do they practice?
My dad was a personal injury attorney, and my mom, gosh, what does my mom do? She does some type of law. She used to be a lawyer for Union Pacific Railroad. She basically does stuff with trains. I feel like none of this is going to be correct, but she does something like that. But she's a trial lawyer, and yeah, they both were like,
Oh, real? Okay. Well, if you're a trial lawyer, you got to have some performance skills.
okay,
So
so
maybe.
this is where, like, when I was considering law school, she was like, my parents also only call me Kathleen. My mom would be like, Kathleen, being a trial lawyer is kind of like performing. And I was like, is it? But that was sort of her way to kind of sway me to go into law.
I always had kind of a pet interest in law.
Mm,
And then I were like, yeah, I don't really want to do that. I think Tom Hanks put it best. He said it's like doing homework for a living, and I don't want to do that.
no, I don't
Um,
want to do that. And I also
so
feel like if I was a trial lawyer, like, it'd be really hard not for me to be like, you know what? This other side makes a really good point. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like I'm like, I don't know that you should go with us.
well, you're one of five,
Yeah.
or there's five other siblings?
I am the oldest of five. Yeah.
Oldest of. So where do the other siblings land career wise? So anybody else choose this path and go, hey, if Kathleen can do it, I can do this too.
Nobody
You
was
know.
dumb enough to choose this path. Everybody was very wise. My sister is or was a special ed teacher. My brother Andrew works nonprofit for Berkeley University. And my brother John is a lawyer. And
Mhm.
then my brother Nick works in real estate finance. So everybody did real life jobs, real people jobs. Nobody was really interested in going into this.
So everybody's kind of like, well, they're what they say down south. They're kind of look at you. Well, bless her
Bless
heart,
her
she's
heart. Yeah,
doing this thing.
that's exactly right. Everybody was like,
Um,
"Yeah, you go try that," and I was like, "Okay, I will." But they're great.
so how long, like when we kind of moved out of our fiber bar phase, when did you start feeling the traction? What was kind of when did things start moving for you in a positive, non-rodent feed kind of way?
Right. When did I get out of the dark ages? I would say teachers. When teachers was a sitcom that I co-created with the Katydids, who I mentioned earlier, that was on TV Land. And I think when that show came out, it came out in 2016. That's when I sort of was like, oh, I don't have to work another job while doing this. So it felt a little bit safe. And like, I felt like I was like, oh, okay, this feels real. This feels like I'm
Mhm.
doing it. So I would say teachers, when teachers came out.
So you're getting kind of a schooling on how the machine works, how stem to stern. Were you moving more in the I want to do the more on camera stuff, or are we moving more in the direction of like I want to create more things, directing, producing, writing? Was there an ambition for you either direction?
I think after the first year of doing teachers, I really loved acting. And that was great because we, along with my friends, was getting to write the character. And so it was easier for me to act things that I was writing because I understood it and it was coming from, a place that I was writing. But I think I always felt like I just liked wearing all the hats and it was more fun to sort of do the rest of the stuff too. And so I think maybe after the first, or I would say maybe after the second season is when I really thought, is this the right lane for me? Or is this other lane more fitting? And then, to be honest with you, I would say in like the last many, many years, it was sort of this weird thing I struggled with because it was the intention I had coming out here was to be an actor. And then you sort of go through a weird grieving process, not in a bad way, but more of like an honest realization of, does this
Yeah.
bring me joy? And the answer I kept coming back to was sometimes. But what brought me a lot of joy were all these other things. And so I kept landing in that lane. And I thought, you know what? If I'm landing over here, maybe this is where I should put more of my effort.
Well, did the other members of the Katydids, did they come to LA as well? Or was this just a concept and maybe only a couple of y'all ended up on the show?
Yeah, we all came out to LA. We all were on the show. TV Land was really incredible where they let us all star in it. I mean, we were all six complete unknowns. And when that show sold, I mean, I didn't have final draft. Like TV Land bought me final draft. So, but yeah, they all came out and are actors and really successful and really talented and have gone on to do really great and wonderful things in acting and writing. And yeah, I just sort of had this big craving to do teachers all over again. And I just liked the start to finish process of creating a show and creating the characters and seeing it all the way through. There's nothing cooler.
Just to hit rewind a little bit, in high school, were you in theater? Was any of this performance stuff going on while you were in high school? Or were you more of a sporting kid or academic? What were you up to?
Thanks for asking if I was a sporting kid. I was on the freshman basketball team. My nickname was Brick. So that did not go so well. I was notorious for launching. I would get put in like the last 30 seconds. And then I would always launch the ball from the 3-point line and it would just like shatter off the back. So no, I really didn't do sports. I did a lot of theater and little bit of a brag. I was heavily involved in show choir. So
you were really? Okay.
Yeah, right. Which, I know is a little bit like intimidating. But that was like I loved show choir. You're probably going to ask, can you sing? And the answer is no. So,
but can you be very, very flamboyant and big?
Yes.
And I was definitely not a theater kid at all. I thought I had no inclination to do that. I want to work in radio since I was 7. You have
such a good radio voice. That makes sense. Like you have a great radio voice.
Well, I didn't sound like this until a little bit after 7 years old because I think that would have scared some of my elementary teachers.
Like
that would have been kind of cool, though. That would have been cool. Like, yeah, I want my cookies. What do they do with like snack time? Cookies and juice, whatever. I don't know where that came from, but anyway, but when did you feel that creative flex? Like you mentioned the improv and watching Christopher Guest. When did that start happening for you? How old were you?
I would say, okay, so it's funny that you mentioned high school. So yes, heavily influenced and watched those films on repeat. But I would say I went to this really incredible high school in Omaha called Westside High School. And I was doing theater and I was doing show choir and I was really heavily involved in all of that. And I really felt like that high school really shaped me as a person and a creative person. I think if I had gone to a different high school, I don't know that I would be doing this career, but I really felt like this creative expansion at Westside, and I felt like they fostered that, and I had incredible teachers, and also Omaha. I every time I go back there, I really feel a creative expansion there that I sort of can't explain. But I would say my high school really was sort of when I felt like my personality like popped, and I started to realize like, oh, this is the person that I think I should become. yeah, high school, I guess, is I feel like I've
Yeah, guys, I think it's like whenever somebody, you always hear stories of there's somebody who kind of says, "Yeah, you can do this." They encouraged you or they gave you permission in a way, because sometimes when you're a kid, you feel like you need permission to, do whatever. But jumping back, you're in LA now
Mhm.
and you're feeling traction, with teachers. What was the premise of teachers? Was it like, well, obviously, were you a teacher, and
Yes.
teacher? Was that I have not caught that yet, but I would like to.
Catch it.
But what
It's on Paramount Plus. It's a really fun show. It's Tim Bagley stars in it, and a lot of other really great comedians like Rob Riggle, Rob Corddry, Allison Brie. It's a fun, really fun comedy. But yes, the premise of Teachers. So how Teachers came about in Chicago as the web series is my comedy group, the Katydids. We all sort of look like teachers. And the director, Matt Miller, who directed the show, said to us, like, you all kind of look like teachers. Would you ever do a web series about teaching? So the premise of the show really is about these 6 women who are elementary school teachers, but their own personal lives keep bleeding into the classroom. So I played a character named Miss Bennigan. And her really series long arc is she's quite smitten with a hot dad. And that's sort of her thing. But yeah, that was the premise of the show. And it's just a really fun comedy.
I always say this almost every episode, at least once. There's so much stuff
So much.
out there that, it's like inevitably, I have to, with intent, go hunt down, something that
Yeah.
got to be a cool feeling that your first experience is actually in LA is creating and doing your own thing. Most people kind of show up and just kind of go through the audition process of the trunk of their cars or their Saab is loaded with all the different clothes and changes, and you're just going from one audition to the other. But you're out there immediately kind of putting something together, not immediately, but you're out there putting it together. But what did that turn into after Teachers? Where'd you kind of go from there?
After Teachers, so Teachers ended, I think in 2019. And in between that, as a group, we had sold some pilots and a movie. And then, COVID hit. And it was sort of this weird time of like, wait, what do we do now? Like, COVID has hit. What does the industry look like? So to be totally frank, after Teachers, very delusionally was like, my career is set. Like, I'm going to be working and yada, yada, yada. And that was not the case at all. The show ended and I had to sort of like figure out what does this next chapter look like. So after that, I worked on a show for a very short time. I don't know if you remember Quibi, the short-lived Quibi.
Yeah, yeah.
I worked on a show that
Wait,
was
wasn't that supposed to be something that was almost exclusively distributed over app and computer or
Yes,
something?
it was supposed to be, I think, distributed while you were commuting and on the go. And it launched when COVID hit. So everybody was at home
Yeah.
and not on the go. But I worked on this really, really great show called Your Daily Horoscope. That was an animated show that Will Arnett executive produced, and my friend Kelly Landry ran, and that was a blast. And then after that, I did the Santa Clauses with Tim Allen for Disney Plus, which was really, really fun. And I enjoyed that thoroughly. And then the Z Suite. So since Teachers, it's kind of been bopping around, working on different things, developing things, and staffing, and just doing all the things that we all do out here.
You mentioned COVID, the bubble. I can't remember exactly what you played in the bubble. I'm drawing a little bit of a blank. I don't know why,
Yeah,
because it's been a couple of years since I've seen it. I think, but
no, well, I have to jog my memory too. But yeah, the bubble was really cool. I got to do that. A friend of mine, Chris Witoski, was kind enough to suggest me for that role to Judd Apatow. And that's how I got involved in it. And it was really fun. I sort of just played Chris's girlfriend in the movie, but it was crazy because we were shooting that during COVID. And so it was
Mhm.
really wild, but it was so cool.
It's so funny because there's such an ensemble. I'm trying to put it, like I
Yeah.
said, it's been a moment, but I got to know though because I'm sort of I don't I never not obsessed about anything, but I'd love to sit down with Judd Apatow one day. The guy always seems to be batting 1,000.
Yes.
What was like working on one of his projects?
I mean, it was everything you would think and more. And I had such a minuscule role on it. And it was so incredible to be a part of it. And, he's exactly what you would think in my short time working with him. He was incredibly collaborative, fun. He really wasn't behind the monitors, he was just out with us. And just sort of like, what about this? Try this, have fun with this. Like it was very collaborative and fun and frankly, very easygoing. Like it truly was a wonderful experience. It was really cool to watch him work. And
Where did y'all shoot this the film?
my part, we shot we shot in the Palisades at a house in the Palisades.
Mhm.
And so that's where I shot, but I know that they were shooting some of it abroad, but I shot here in LA. And because it was COVID, it was a super minimal crew, very, very bare bones. And I showed up to this house in the Palisades. Judd was there, and it was like, okay, let's do this thing, and did it. And it was incredible. He's the loveliest, kindest human who's just incredibly talented and smart.
It's funny because it was a movie about a thing that was actually going on at the time they were shooting it. And I can't tell you God, I'm trying to think, even right about the time we started this show, this podcast, some of the folks I was talking to, they're like, "Hey, hang on a second, can you hang on a second?" I was like, they have to go to their front door and there's somebody there swabbing their nose,
Yes.
because when they're on the show, but you have to kind of get tested daily. There's this whole thing that people will write about and talk about years down the road that was seemingly very normal for a moment,
Yes, that was
because everybody was doing it.
it. You showed up and you got tested and you went in, and it was, I mean, yeah, it was kind of the whole thing. I totally forget that that was all part of it because I think our brains just don't want to acknowledge that it was this insane time. But it
Yeah.
was really cool, and he's so cool, and I had been a fan of his for forever, and so just to be in his presence, I was like, this is crazy. Like he's just a great
Yeah.
person.
I'm a big believer that part of what we need more of is more of his brand of comedy out there. We just need, I think, more comedies. I know I don't know. I was going through, forgot one of the streamers. It's like, there seem to be a lot of shows about dystopian stuff. I'm like, it seems like we're all the goofy, hey, I'm down for a fart joke.
Totally, bring it
Like,
back.
so, but which kind of brings us to Z Suite. I'm not saying fart joke to see. I didn't mean like that, but I mean, you're kind of doing almost the full 360 on. Did you direct any episodes? Because I know it seems like you're doing everything else. It seemed writing it.
I did not direct. I set out to I really wanted to direct. And then as we sort of got into it, you're wearing so many hats and you're doing so many things. And I thought, you know what? I think, to be frank with you, it would have been a disservice to the show and the cast for me to try and direct this season. I think for the first season of a show, like it really is my job to protect the show and make the best show possible. And I think, something I was sort of wrestling with is like, I needed to put my own aspirations and goals of directing to the side for this first season, because I think it would have gotten in the way,
Well, you're doing a lot. I mean, writing it and producing. I mean, you've got plenty on your plate to begin with.
Yeah. And I think for the first
Um,
season of a show, you're figuring it out and you're feeling it all out, and so I think if we were ever lucky enough to get a season 2, I would love to direct. But this first season, I really thought, stay in the showrunner lane, make the best show possible, and then you can look to direct on, if you continue on. But it felt a disservice to the show to try and do that this first season.
I will say this: as the parent of Gen Z kids, and me being Gen X, I mean, I see some of the like, okay, that's a thing. It seems like this show can appeal to multiple generations. It's almost like you wonder if the Gen Z kids would. I'm assuming they're going to see the satire. If they don't, then there's this. It's a cute premise. I really dig it. Now, but how did that come together? Was just observationally, or just listening to the way Gen Z interacts with other generations, and just kind of like there's a show there. Is that how did it come together?
Yeah. So similarly to sort of what you were talking about before, I'm a huge fan of just comedy, and I really was craving just a funny comedy. I was like, where are these just like fun, enjoyable comedies? And I really like generational relationships. A lot of my friendships are generational relationships between some of my closest friends. And I thought that was such an interesting idea. And then Tubi was looking to get into the scripted space, and it really was just sort of kismet how it all came about. And I just saw the show very clearly. I wanted to do a super fun, funny comedy where these generations had to work together and learn from each other. But, at the end of the day, it really is just about character, strong, funny characters with strong points of view and, sharing the same space. So that's really how the show came about is, it's not so specific on Gen Z or Gen X. That's for sure a part of the show and the log line of the show, but it really is about just very different people trying to work together and accomplish the same thing at the end of the day.
I've only, of course, got the first couple of episodes, but I do like the idea of churros.
Yep.
That was something I saw. It's like, it seemed like there was a little, I don't want to give anything away, but I was kind of a funny little add-on to, it seems like the whole, I don't even know if it really is Gen Z, be more millennials that kind of came out, like went to work at Google, and that was all about having a fun atmosphere and that kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And Lauren Graham's character is like, her whole thing is in which I identify with. She's like, she's been working at this ad agency for, was it 30 years, I think, that's a big generational note, is that whole logging your 10,000 hours. And then, that was they want it now that lack of patience. But it's like, when I was that age, I was impatient as well.
Totally.
It's just, I had,
I mean, I think that, the show kind of in a really fun way explores, like you said, like, Lauren's character, her name is Monica, and like she had to, she worked her butt off to get where she was, and she put in the hours and the time and did all the things, and as a result had a really successful career. And, Gen Z, who's sort of led by Madison Shamoon, who plays Kriska, their attitude is like, I should just deserve this. Like, why wouldn't I just get this? And they have a totally different approach to work-life balance and what it means to work. And so, there isn't like, we did a lot of research talking to people that worked at companies of what, the different generations felt about working. And it was really interesting to hear, how boomers and Gen X will do anything for the job. And Gen Z is like, my mental health and my life come first. And the job I'll find another job if I have to. So it was really interesting to talk to different people, what their experiences were like.
Hey, it's Mark Preston, and I would like to tell you a little bit about one of our sponsors, X-Chair. Whether you're working from home or in the office, if you have a job or a task that has you sitting for a long period of time, this is the chair for you. Very comfortable, very customizable. They'll make it pretty much any way you want it. The look, the feel, the fabrics, everything. Plus, this is the kind of chair you can adjust to make it fit you just right. No matter your body type, it's spot on. I love my X-Chair. It has the Elemax cooling, heating, and massage technology. It is going to make your lower back feel so very good. Got to throw a little bit of love to X-Chair. It's the chair I'm sitting in every time I talk to a guest. So I've had a lot of time to have my tush in this chair, and the tush, the back, everybody's happy. Just go to storyandcraftpod.com/chair. Once again, X-Chair, check it out, storyandcraftpod.com/chair. Love my X-Chair. Your back will thank you. The casting, was that something that was easy for you, or was that you had a clear picture of who you wanted, or the kind of characters you wanted, or was it a long, arduous process to get there?
That was a really interesting process because, you go when you write something and you create something, you have an idea, and I didn't really have anyone specific in mind for Monica. I just sort of had this idea of what I wanted her to be. And then you kind of are shocked when anybody's willing to do it and shows interest. And so with Lauren, I was such a big fan of Gilmore Girls. And when she showed an interest in the project, I was just floored. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And she really brings an intelligence to Monica and a sophistication. And she really elevated the character in a way that I could not have anticipated and really made her so much more three-dimensional than was on the page. So she was quite easy. Nico Santos, who plays Doug, I have been friends with Nico
Mhm.
for over 10 years. And so writing Doug, I always knew I wanted it to be Nico. I was like, I wrote it for Nico. I was hoping it was Nico. I couldn't imagine anybody else but Nico. So when he was willing to do it, I just was so grateful because I can't imagine anybody else playing that role. And then for the Gen Z kids, Madison came to us quite late in the audition process, and I saw her tape pretty late, and we sort of had a direction we thought we were going to go in, and then Madison's tape came in, and I was really impressed by her, and she came in and read, and I just was like, oh my gosh, she's fantastic. And then Spencer, who plays Elliot, is not what I imagined at all. Like sometimes in casting, this thing happens where you have a very clear image of a character. And I had very loosely written Elliot based off a friend of mine named Jimmy Fowley, who's a comedian and a really talented actor and writer. And Jimmy is blonde and tan and is, a lot of energy. And I had a very clear idea of what I wanted Elliot to be, kind of this like Jimmy Fowley / Troy Sivan character. And then
Mhm.
Spencer Stevenson came in and I threw that all out the window. And I was like, this is Elliot. Like Spencer just blew me away. And then Clem, who's played by Anna, we searched high and low for Clem. We tested all over the place. We tested a bunch of really talented people who were incredible. But I just felt like Clem was still out there. And I was looking on Instagram and I was looking at people on TikTok and I was searching high and low along with our really incredible casting director, Julie Ashton. And then Anna came to us by way of UCB and submitted a tape. And I just was like, this is Clem. This is Clem. So it's kind of weird how it all shook out. There were some people that from the beginning, I was like, this is who it has to be. And then some people who show up and just totally take you in a direction that you think, gosh, this is so fantastic. It can't not be this person. So it was
Yeah, and writing I guess you have to be, very flexible. But I was talking to somebody the other day, and in the writing, in the books about screenplay writing, they like, like don't cast it while you're, writing. I was like, how can you not? Because
right.
as you're writing it, you're putting it together, you're getting this idea. But like you're saying, sometimes like it's got to be this person. Like, is writing for you easy? Is it something that you sit down and kind of suffer from too many options, or is it very methodical process? What's writing like for you?
Oh, that's a good question. You know what? I'm really more of a collaborative writer. I really like collaborating while writing because I come from a really collaborative background. So I don't really
Yeah.
sit down and I'm not like a Mike White where I sit down and I can put together the entire thing by myself. I really like collaborating. And so just because I think I come from an improv background and I'm used to that. So I'll usually bounce ideas off friends or kind of workshop things or talk them out. And then I'll sit down and write them out. But it's very piecemeal. It comes and goes. Some days I'm feeling it, sometimes I'm not. But I do try and just plow through whenever I'm not feeling it because I find if I stop, the only time I get into real trouble is if I stop writing. That's the only time I get into trouble.
Do you have like a little notebook in your purse or whatever you pull out and you're making notes all day long, or you hear somebody say something like just the line like he was in at the coffee shop, just a little like, is that based off an experience or just those kind of things,
Yes. Yeah.
uh,
I have a notes app in my phone where I'm sort of always jotting things down. And then I'll usually sometimes write scenes for things that I'm thinking about. I'll just throw it up on Final Draft. And then, yeah, so that's kind of the way I go about it. It's very piecemeal. It's not linear but I do try and start from like a beat sheet or an outline. I can't just sort of go in free flow.
whenever I write something, it's just kind of for fun, a little cathartic exercise. I haven't done it in a while. I'm like, maybe one day I'll sell a screenplay. Who knows? But for me, it's just kind of fun. On occasion, just sit down, Final Draft, and start banging something out. One of the things I enjoyed about it is like, actually, I forgot. It got a solid laugh out of me a couple times, kind of like, it's something where like my generation, the Gen X kids will look at it and go, yeah, that's really aggravating. And I imagine my kids' generation will look at it and go, yeah, I understand that. Yeah. So it really kind of pokes fun equally,
Yes, that
which
was
is
the
kind of nice.
intention, is nobody's right. The intention is nobody's right, everybody's wrong. And yeah, I really wanted a show where like my mom could watch it and my younger brother could watch it and enjoy it at the same time and just laugh. And it's not meant to be a larger message of Gen X is right or Gen Z is right. It's just meant to be everybody's just doing what they know and doing the best they can, and that, that can be problematic.
The opening sequence in the first episode with Madison's character, she's recording her life on phone, and which is really funny because one of the things I always think about is like there's somebody on the other side of that phone. There's been a couple times like I've been at the grocery store or somewhere and somebody's got their phone and they're having a little moment with their phone. I was like, what are they talking with somebody? Are they,
Yes.
what's going on here? So it was kind of a cute way of referencing, okay, there's another world that's observing her doing her, like she's living in her own little bubble, and,
Totally.
and it was very satisfying to watch that, I will say.
Oh, good, good. Yeah, she's very much the main character in her world, and everybody's just
Yeah.
just side players.
I'm looking at like, okay, where is the inspiration coming from? Did you sit down and buy many lunches for some younger Gen Z kids? Just like, give me your ideas. It was that idea. Like when I worked in radio, they're always trying to bring in somebody younger. There's always some consultant. There's always somebody who knows a thing, and the powers that be that are out of touch don't know who to reach to. So that's kind of cool the way right out of the gate it kind of alludes to that. Like who's knowledgeable, who's going to tap into this thing we don't understand at all.
Yes,
What kind of research did you do to make that all happen, generally?
I did a lot of research on TikTok, which was just beyond enjoyable. And honestly, shout out to my Gen Z brother, Nick. He was my little Gen Z consultant. I had him read drafts of the pilot where I was like, does this feel accurate? Does this feel accurate? And he would sort of fact check me on a lot of it. So I had him as a source. I had cousins. We had Gen Z writers in the writers' room who it was very humbling where, we would throw out an idea and they'd be like, that's not what people say anymore. Or that's not what we do. And it'd be like, oh, okay. So
Yeah, there was a cringe moment when Lauren's character was, trying as, she's, I guess, my generation, Gen X, trying to connect and use phrases like, I can see myself being in that same situation. And that's how they say if you could determine if somebody's generation by the slang they use.
yes, for
And
sure.
yeah, I have to ask my kids, they're the ones who decrypt for me, like the phraseology that you allude to in the show.
Yes.
They can interpret for me. I will say
Yes,
that,
it's nice to have like an interpreter. And it was so interesting because, there was so much about Gen Z that I actually really admire, that like I find them to be a really incredible generation. And, things that I would talk to my brother about or writers in the writers' room, where I was like, gosh, there's so much about this generation that's really incredible. And then I found, like any other generation, being like, and then there's things about this generation that I hate. So I think
Mhm.
it's just how we all feel. I think we're all very partial to our own generation and our own experiences. And if you didn't do things exactly how we did it, we kind of have an axe to grind. But then it's sort of, there's something sort of wonderful about looking at all the really wonderful things that this generation does put first and forward, that you're kind of like, you know what, they have so much right. So it was a good education experience.
Things move a lot faster for them. We didn't have phones in our pocket. Well, I didn't have phone in my pocket when I was a kid.
No.
The whenever they did have phones, they couldn't fit in your pocket.
Yes.
Certainly, I just think things move a lot faster. We talk about MTV. The trends used to travel west to east. And what's happening in LA, and now it's everywhere all at once.
Right.
And it lasts 2 seconds.
Yes.
It seems like. Are you working on just this right now, or you got some other things that are cooking? Anything on the horizon on camera, behind the camera, anything you're working on?
Yeah, right now I'm still heavily involved in this. I'm in post, which is so wonderful and fun to see it all come together. And then, I mean, yeah, there's so much more I want to do. I'm always creating and writing, and I would love to direct and get more into that. And so I don't know. I feel like I kind of always have things going on, but this is definitely first and foremost. And finishing this out, and it's just been a blast. I've had the time of my life doing this show, so I'm really excited to get it out there.
Before we get going here, I always do what I call my 7 questions in the back end, and I always end up talking about food at least once in an episode. And I always like to ask, what is now you're a Nebraska girl, and I got to know. I don't know if it's a big old hunk of steak or what it is, but your all-time favorite comfort food.
I know exactly what this is: bone and ribeye, medium, loaded baked potato, no sour cream, wedge salad, large Diet Coke. Boom, done.
Wait, loaded baked potato with no sour
cream. I can't do sour cream. I think I don't know what it is.
You're one of those textural people. I mean, I'm one of those too. I can't do Alfredo sauces or anything.
Yeah, I'm not a big Alfredo person either, but like sour cream, I'm like, what is it? Why do we have it? What do we need it for? It's cream, but I don't get it. So no sour cream, but like butter, bacon bits, chives, all of that, cheese, give me in a baked potato, but like do not put sour cream near it.
So your favorite comfort food is a steak. See, everybody I know from Omaha, they always talk about the steak.
The steaks. Yeah, Omaha steaks. Yeah, it's like what we have.
Yeah. So do you ever see Warren Buffett by any chance when you're rolling around Omaha?
I do, actually. Yeah, I've seen him a couple times. One time, this was a real big celebrity sighting in Omaha, but I saw him at Nebraska Furniture Mart, which was thrilling. But yeah, he's our guy, the Oracle of Omaha. We also have Alexander Payne. He's our other homegrown hero. But yeah, we see Warren every once in a while. I haven't seen him in the last couple of years, but he's a good sighting when you can catch him.
Yeah, yeah. Because I once upon a time, I do voice. I do a lot of voiceover, and I do kind of focus on promo stuff. And I was the voice of the Nebraska football.
Oh,
they had me do like the TV stuff. You're watching blah blah blah.
That's awesome.
So I got a little bit of connection. That's where I heard about steak from. Is those guys.
Yeah.
Now, next question I got for you: if you're going to sit down, you're going to talk story, you're going to have coffee. You and 3 other people, living or not, who would you like to sit down with for a few hours to talk story?
This is a really good question. I'm going to go with Jesus, because if he shows up, it will clarify a lot. If he does, do you know what I mean? Okay, so he would be number 1. Number 2. This is good. I'm gonna go and also he could be the greatest storyteller of our time.
And plus, it saves money just to order water. It's going to turn into wine.
Exactly.
So it's got a little.
My dog. Could we turn some of this into more? So he'd be my number 1 reservation. Story. Oh, this is a really good question. Probably also my second one would be Christopher Guest, just because, like I've said, I'm such a big fan of his, and I think he's so fantastic and smart and funny and all the things. And then third, I'm gonna throw in there Tina Fey, because I think she's incredible and very talented, and she's been a hero of mine for forever. And I think her knack for story and television writing is unprecedented. So it'd be.
I was just talking. My son was in town the other day. We were talking about who's going to take over eventually on Saturday Night Live. I'm like, I think Tina Fey would take it to the next level.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, the big JC comes up a lot as an answer to this. So there you go. So that's it. Plus, I think. Just Jesus and Tina Fey sitting down, going back and forth. That would be interesting.
It would be great.
Now, the next question I got for you, going back to when you were young, or younger rather, but who was your first celebrity crush when you were growing up?
Oh, it was. That's a really good question. The first one that comes to mind, only because he recently resurfaced on the news, is I really did have a big crush on Steve Guttenberg. I was a little bit of a Gutenberg gal.
Yeah, I saw him on TV a couple days ago. Yeah. I was like,
yeah, he popped up, and I was like, "There's my guy." There's my guy. But yeah, Steve, I had a big crush on Steve Gutenberg growing up. A lot of other people my age might say Jonathan Taylor Thomas, or
Yeah.
but really, when it comes down to it, I was a Gutenberg gal.
Yeah, he's a funny guy. Plus, he was kind of built,
Yeah,
Yeah,
very
yeah, yeah.
handsome.
Now, the next question I got for you: if you're going to be going to, let's say, you're going to be on an island, exotic island, somewhere you want to be. You're not a castaway.
Okay.
It's like a resort, but there's no streaming, there's no internet. You're going to have to bring, if you want to listen to music, you got to bring one CD, and you're going to want to watch a movie, one DVD, or I'll even say a box set if you want. So it's something you can listen to and watch all that whole year you're going to be on the island. What would the CD and what would the DVD be for you?
Okay, the CD would be Fleetwood Mac's Rumors, and the DVD would be Best in Show, just because that's my number one. Yeah, neither of those really have island vibes, but that's what I would bring.
But you could watch it over and over again. That's really, there are those movies that always come on. Like for my kids, it was 50 First Dates.
Oh, yeah,
Whenever
that's
that'd come
a great
on, we
movie.
just end up watching it. There's some movies you just don't watch it. Like, you don't mind watching over and over again. And some music, it's like it can change with your mood. Like you can be in a great mood and you'll want to listen to it.
Yes.
Crappy mood, it lands also. Now, if you were to define from beginning, from the time you wake up to the time you go to sleep, stem to stern, the component parts of a perfect day for you, what would those be?
Coffee, a lot of coffee.
Very good.
Some light.
Well, the question is, I never ask it when people say coffee, which I'm a member of that religion also.
Yes.
What exactly is going in your coffee? Is it black? Is it a little cream, or do you go? Or you people go through Starbucks and the little sticker on the side of the cup looks like the Declaration of Independence with all the modifications.
Yeah. Okay. So let me turn you on to this, and it's not changing the world here, but coffee with a splash of cream and cinnamon powder. That's my little coffee order. But I mean, so much coffee would be a perfect part of my day. And then
it's almost like a little Mexican-ish,
yes.
And like the hot chocolate, little dash of cayenne as well.
Yeah, love a little cinnamon, just a sprinkle. Maybe I love how my brain is like exercise, maybe a trip to the gym, and it's like that's not a part of my perfect day. I would say, if I'm going to be really honest with you, it would be coffee and reality television would be a perfect day for me. And that's book, start to finish.
You're a lady of simple means. I appreciate that.
I'm not going to lie.
Reality, but any particular reality genre?
My entire personality is reality television. And I mean, listen, Housewives, TLC, I mean, all of Bravo I consume. Sister Wives, really anything with wives in the title I've watched. But I love reality television. It brings me so much joy, and I'm its biggest fan.
Well, I was kind of OG growing up. The Real World was, I guess, kind of the first. That was kind of the first reality. In fact, I have this. I have a claim to fame when it comes to that. They way back when they were shooting it in New Orleans. I was on the radio in New Orleans, and I managed to get somebody who was a friend of someone. Long story short, I got banned from the Real World house. Real World said that they sent a memo from New York, like, do not talk to him anymore. Do not, because what was happening is one of the members of the cast was coming on. We'd have him on the show, and they did not want that at all. And it was, so I was like, but that to me was the original reality. Now they call it unscripted.
Yes. Yes. Also, Mark, I'm sorry. I am obsessed that you just said, long story short, I was banned from the Real World house. There's so much missing there, but what happened?
I was tenaciously, they were refusing any kind of they didn't want to have anybody on the radio. Yeah. That wasn't even like necessarily media. They were just they like to keep everything under wraps.
Okay.
So I was like tenacious. I was like, hey, I just went on the air. I was like, hey, if you know somebody who's at the Real World house, just give me a ring, Immediately phone rings. somebody knows somebody. They've been
Sure.
hanging out. I don't know if they're dating or whatever. And now I'm all plugged in. I know all of the drama that are a good chunk of it. And I guess somehow it got out that I wasn't talking about it on the air that well, I wasn't given the nitty gritty. I was just like, hey, talk to somebody out in the real world, because that was a big deal at the time. And they were like, apparently I was the subject of a memo, which makes me so
Oh, you
proud in
should
a
be
way.
so proud. That's a huge accomplishment.
But no, yeah. So anything with wives,
Anything with
that's your
wives. Yeah,
brand.
housewives, sister wives, really anything with wives.
Now, next question I got for you is, if you weren't doing this, if this was no longer an option as far as earning a living, what, besides being an attorney, of course, what would you do for a living? What would be your gig? Something you think you could find joy doing?
Oh, that's a really good question. Oof. I have no other skills, but I would say maybe something with like styling. I like clothes. I think I could get a lot of joy out of being a stylist or working in fashion in some capacity. I think I would really enjoy that. So yeah, I would say that would bring me a lot of joy and be creative.
Or even the set decoration, which, by the way, the show, y'all have some interesting set
Yes,
decking going
we
on.
had
Going back to the churro
oh my
thing,
god,
I'm not good.
Diana Magnus, who was in charge of our set decoration, is a
Well, tell you, I got one last question, and that is, if you were to jump into that DeLorean and travel back, you have a moment with 16-year-old you. What is that piece of advice you'd want to give yourself? You have a couple minutes, either to make that moment of your life somehow better, or put you on a little different trajectory. What kind of advice would you have to 16-year-old Katie?
I would first tell her not to take Accutane, but that's a separate story. I would say don't worry. I would say don't worry. I would say enjoy the ride. Don't worry. It's going to work out in a way that you would have never expected. So don't plan anything and just enjoy it. I think I would have told her that, but I also would sort of tease her and be like, it's going to be better than you could imagine. So I think that's kind of what I would leave her with. But yeah, I for sure.
I have a lot of folks that say something very similar to that, but I never asked the follow-up question. Are you telling yourself that now, though?
No, because that would be no, absolutely not. No, I do try though. I think the one thing, the like life lesson I keep learning is just yeah, don't plan anything, because anything I've ever planned, it doesn't work out that way. And so, but no, I would never tell myself that now. Of course, I'm in existential crisis all the time.
That funny the way life works. It's like you can look back in the rearview mirror. You're like, yeah, it's okay. Or I forgot what this quote was, but they say if you are 50 years old and you look back at your life when you're 20 and you don't think you're any different, you've wasted 30 years. And I don't know where that
Oh,
quote
that's
came
a
from,
great
but
book.
it's still, yeah, it's that thing where you go, God, I was such a knucklehead back at that age. It's like, but wait a minute, we're all knuckleheads and we're perpetually, I'm sure, God willing, I'm here 30 years from now, I'll look back and go, yeah, I was kind of a knucklehead.
Yeah, I hope so. I think it's
Um,
a great thing to look back and go, God, I was an idiot. I think that's a great thing.
I'm so happy I had an opportunity to sit down and chat with you. I'm again, you need to get on this Tubi, people, get the show out sooner, because I want to. Now you've whetted my appetite. I want to see more of the Z Suite, which almost sounds like it could be, kind of a fun office comedy for zombies,
Yeah,
but it's not.
maybe
It's
we'll do another
it's.
show. Yeah, no, I thank you so much for the time and for watching the show. It's been a joy talking to you.
Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll have a chance to catch up down the line.
Amazing. Thanks, Mark. Nice to meet you.
Well, there you go, Katie O'Brien. Enjoyed sitting down, talking a little comedy. The new show on Tubi comes out February 6th. It is called The Z Suite. And as I mentioned earlier, it's kind of cool. You can sit down, Gen X kid like myself can sit down with my kids, Gen Z, and we'll both enjoy it equally. Good show, great show, and cool to sit down with Katie and talk about what it's like to put together this brand new show. Hey, do me a favor, if you would pop over to storyandcraftpod.com/rate. Make sure to rate, leave a review, leave those stars and stuff, and make sure to follow Story and Craft. Whatever your podcast app, make sure to follow. That way you get notified every time there is a new episode, and would love you to come back for the next one. Some cool guests coming up very shortly. Don't want to miss those. As I always say, thank you for making whatever I've got going on here part of whatever you've got going on. It is much appreciated. Okay, so that's it for me. Gonna run on out, take a walk with the pooch. You enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, your weekend, whatever you got going on. Thank you for being here. And I will talk to you next time right here on Story and Craft.
That's it for this episode of Story and Craft. Join Mark next week for more conversation right here on Story and Craft. Story and Craft is a presentation of Mark Preston Productions, LLC. Executive producer is Mark Preston. Associate producer is Zachary Holden. Please rate and review Story and Craft on Apple Podcasts. Don't forget to subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast app. You can subscribe to show updates and stay in the know. Just head to storyandcraftpod.com and sign up for the newsletter. I'm Emma Dillon. See you next time, and remember, keep telling your story.
Come on.